sure. I feel like it's so cool though that you have a horse, and my newest horse is like that too, where he just will not, like, he's like, I'm not going to compromise myself for where you're at. Like, I'm not going to meet you down there where you are. Like, you have to come up here if you want to spend time with me. And at first, like, when you're closed-minded about it, or just when you don't really understand the energy, it like frustrates you and pisses you off. Like, you're like, come on, you're such a dick. But then the more you get to know him and the more like you grow as a person, you're like, damn, it is so cool that you feel confident enough as a prey animal to say, no, like, I will not. Like, that is really cool to have a horse like that.
Yeah. If anything cool comes out, I'll just add it in somewhere. Little out.
Okay.
Just in case.
Well, yeah. Okay. So because we were talking about how you ask your clients to be present for their training sessions, and how even if they're not necessarily doing anything, you want them there, like, you know, sharing that energy. And what's so interesting to me is a lot of times my clients are never there for farrier appointments. Like, someone else is holding them, and I will ask something about the feet or about the process, and they'll be like, oh, I don't know, I wasn't there, I haven't been there. And then that's trickling down into other, like, if the horse knows that you're not present for like those, because to be honest, like, even though a lot of farriers are really patient or whatever, it's kind of an invasive process. Like, you're asking a flight animal to stand on 3 legs for an extended period of time and manipulate their body. And it's just interesting to me that people don't value that time as much. Like, you should be there for your farrier appointments and like for the dentistry appointments. And kind of to that point, I think it's important to educate yourself on the basic structures of like the feet and the mouth and how everything works too. Because when I say something about the foot, and granted, this is coming from, I really did have an amazing opportunity to like work with a professional on feet, but anyone could have that opportunity, you know? And like, if you don't, there's so many resources like YouTube, Google, whatever, just even just understanding the structures of the feet and what the dysfunction looks like. Because when horses ask for change, a lot of times people are like, oh, well, I might talk to my farrier, I might not, don't really know much about it. And then I feel like it gets dismissed. And then I talk to them in the next session and they're like rehabbing an injury. So, but I love that you have your clients present for your training sessions. I feel like that's so important rather than sending them off, because a lot of times I will have people ask me, what happened when they were at the trainer? And, you know, because they just send them off and they don't ever go and see or experience what they're experiencing. And then, you know, as you know, like, there are trainers who, you know, might take advantage of the situation and the horses come back less than what they were, or traumatized or whatever. And it's kind of like, well, that's on you for not going there and like, you know, because no one knows your horse like you do. And for not spending time there, I don't know, just blows my mind.
Yeah. And like, just remembering, like, they're advocates. We're the ones that if something is like off, I think it's really hard for people to speak up, you know, with the farrier, with the vet, or with the trainer. Like, this doesn't feel right, to sort of trust yourself, because you do know your horse, you know, better than anyone else. So that's your role. Be the voice that they don't have. Yeah.
That is really hard too, to kind of step up, because for years I took Kip to trainers who I knew it didn't resonate with me or with him. Like, he just kept breaking. He kept having all these issues. And I justified it by saying, well, what do I know? I'm not a trainer. Or, you know, and that's like, that's such a dumb, no offense to someone who has this mindset, but that is a horrible mindset. Like, I can't believe that I was there for so long and that my horse didn't like kick me in the face, because not like, I'm not a trainer. It's like, if horses are such a big responsibility, and I feel like that term just needs to go away.
That was the other thing, is I was talking, well, I don't even know how we started to get onto the topic or why we got on the phone. Tammy, again, yesterday in that conversation, I had said, oh, I was ordering ulcer stuff for a couple of my clients. And we were just sort of talking about, and I had said to her, I was like, like literally the more you know, it's so overwhelming. And then I start going, I don't even know if I should be training. Like, I don't even know half of the shit I probably need to know to be able to like, am I doing worse for this horse? Or, you know, and she's like, no, 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 you know, and it's like having the knowledge of where your deep understanding of things stops, and then having people to call and be like, okay, like, you know, to be able to have that and say, I don't know what this is, but like, can you show me, or can you point me in the right direction? Or, you know, instead of just going, oh, I don't know, you know, and then just sticking your head in the ground like an ostrich and then letting it just continue until something bigger happens where you can't ignore it. And knowing just enough about everything to sort of know when things are going wrong. Good experience about, I was married to a farrier for a long time, and I went to a lot of shoeing conferences, and I went always like around it and hearing it, and then I would hold horses for him. And so I don't know everything, but I know when things look like they're going in the wrong direction. And I have two horses that inside, you know, since they were like 3, have already had, you know, the navicular changes and the cysts and stuff. And so the moment, and then of course we get a divorce, and I'm like, oh, fuck, I have to find a farrier. And now I know,
Yeah.
and now I know too much. And, you know, and so the problem there is, at least I have a good understanding of, I can see that things are headed in the wrong direction, but it's so hard to then speak up because you're not a farrier and advocate for your horse. And even I had a couple farriers that I went through the beginning. I brought x-rays from the couple days before, and I was like, here's the x-rays. Like, I know how to do this because I know how farriers want to be talked to, because I was married to one. I know you want x-rays because you want to see the inside. I know you don't want me to tell you what to do, but here's the x-ray. So you should know what to do with this x-ray because you can see it. And it's still, you know, they have their own beliefs and their own ways they do things. So it was just a matter of, you are a really nice human being, but like, I cannot continue to use you, because after at that point, you know, God, the struggle. Farriers are hard to find. They're either good or they don't show up here, or they are really consistently showing up and they're super nice, but they suck.
Yeah, it's like hard work too. Like, I don't enjoy it. Like, it's not fun. I know that, like, I feel like I'm pretty decent at it, and I could probably like help some of my friends that are in this area, but I'm like, no, like, it's just way too much work. It's not enjoyable. But I know, I feel like farriers are hard to find. And trainers too, honestly. Like, for the longest time, I guilted myself about being like a trainer hopper, because I would like take a couple lessons and I'd be like, nope, my horse is like, I just don't understand the mindset of pushing them through the resistance. Like, when a trainer will be like, you know, keep holding the outside, like, don't let it go, don't drop him or whatever. And that has never, I've always gotten the correction, like, stop dropping him, like, close your finger, all this stuff that I'm just like, it doesn't resonate with me. And now, you know, as I'm like meeting Celeste, it's funny because like I went to that clinic with her, and I was like, okay, can I ride without a bit? Can I kick my feet out of my stirrups? And can I leave my fingers open? And she was like, fuck yes, this is exactly how you can ride. And I was like, yes. So she has helped me a lot too. But yeah, it's just crazy. Like, and you just don't know what you don't know at the time. And I know that, like, I'm sure you've been through similar experiences where you kind of like did things a lot different than you do them now, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And it's insane to think about like how forgiving our horses were like up until this point, you know what I mean? And I feel like the good horses set the standard, and that is the hardest part, because they're so forgiving and they're so willing. That horses have set the standard that like a normal ride is like walk, trot, canter, and maybe jumping once a week, and like, or, you know, rodeo horses, they've set this like a certain standard, and now people come to expect that, and then they forget to like meet them where they're at that day or that week or whatever.
I was just saying yesterday that I had an old YouTube channel and had training videos on it, and I'd watched some of them and I was like, oh my God, make it stop, please. Make it stop. Like, and I'm like yelling at myself, like, just slow down. Like, why did you go again? It was just like really painful to watch. And it's my 2 that I have 3 still, and 2 of them I've had, one since she was 4 months old with her mama. And then we weaned her later on. And then my gelding, and my gelding is like a fiery little red dragon. Like, horse would not shut down. He will fight you. He was a stud almost until he was 3, and he was great. He was always out with other horses. He was, he was never that way. Like, he would never know he was a stud. And I was in the middle of the divorce, and I was like, I want to get him on cows. He's good right now. I can't do this consistently. I feel like, and so I sent him off to someone in Arizona that I knew. And he was like, this is one of the toughest horses that I have like worked. And this guy has literally been around, won multiple world championship. Like, he's not like just some random trainer. And he was like, this is a tough sucker. Like, what, and he's like, we're going to have to castrate him. But it wasn't even that. And I know him now. And I'm like, because he wouldn't, if you're going to try to force something on him, he's going to be like, I don't give a shit how long and how hard I have to fight. Like, I will not shut down, and I will not give in. It's just like, so having him in my life was really like this whole lesson about like how there's another way that you're going to have to do this, especially with that horse. Cause there is no compromise in that way. Like, things need to be very fair, and they need to be very aware of everything. And he's amazing of like learning more about the body. And then the whole Celeste thing, when I ran into that, and then I met Tammy, and it was like, yeah, I don't know if I know anything now at this point,
I know. I feel that way too. I look at my like old typed readings too, and I'm like, good God, like I did not know enough about the body back then. Or like even just like horse behaviors. Like, I'd be like, the hierarchy is all wrong here. And like, that's not what they were trying to say at all. So I totally feel you on that for sure. I feel like it's so cool though that you have a horse, and my newest horse is like that too, where he just will not, like, he's like, I'm not going to compromise myself for where you're at. Like, I'm not going to meet you down there where you are. Like, you have to come up here if you want to spend time with me. And at first, like, when you're closed-minded about it, or just when you don't really understand the energy, it like frustrates you and pisses you off. Like, you're like, come on, you're such a dick. But then the more you get to know him, and the more like you grow as a person, you're like, damn, it is so cool that you feel confident enough as a prey animal to say, no, like, I will not. Like, that is really cool to have a horse like that.
Yeah, it's definitely, that's his whole thing. And it's like, wow, like, and so you look at him totally different once you realize like what it took for him, even through when he was there for those 2 or 3 months, what it took for him to keep that, because I know that it was a very different atmosphere than even what I was doing, because it's a performance barn. It's like, they're pumping horses out to go show, and I just wanted him on cows consistently. So I know what he had to go through and fight through and still not shut down. And, and I'm like, okay, I see you. Okay. I see you. Yeah. And then his sister is like, she's just a freaking unicorn. Like, she was in the middle, just when I should have been like sort of starting her and stuff, in the midst of us moving and divorcing and all the things. And so like, I think I started her, and I think one day I was just like, I wonder what would happen if I just got on her right now, like bareback. And she was like, okay, are we going to go yet? And she was just like, so ready, where he was like, I'm in a bronc. I don't like this saddle like this. I don't like it when you lean like that. It was just always something. And she's like, I don't give a shit. Just, can we get on with this? Like, whatever we're going to do. And I can put anyone on her, and she's spicy as shit in her like existence on this property. She's like the queen, but you stick anyone on her and she's like, just happy. I'm just happy to work. I'm just happy someone is doing something with me. I'm just happy to be here. And they're so opposite, but like, so both of them are so cool. So yeah, it's
nice to have that too. Cause I kind of have that in my barn, where I have like my steady dude. And then I have my like super sensitive one, where like, I know if I'm going to work with him first, I'm drinking decaf coffee. So like my energy can be like super low. But it's like refreshing to be able to be like, okay, I'm not like mentally that great today or whatever. I don't feel like really calming my energy. So I'm just going to ride you today and not work with the other horse, because then you can really, when you have that dynamic, you can make sure that you're setting everyone up for success, versus like, was he your only horse for a while? Like, he was like your main dude for a while. So you were almost like forced into that situation.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I have 3, and one is 15, and he's my old cutter that I lease him out now, and I use him for our meditation sessions and stuff. And he is just like, he's been through a lot with me. And so I sort of, when I got my 2 younger ones, I was like, okay, I'm sorry. Like, I promise you, the rest of your life is just going to be super easy. Like, I won't, I was like bending him around, like spurring him, trying to get him to do all this shit. I'm like, what? Painful to watch. And I'm like, oh my God, this poor horse who's like, also wouldn't shut down, but he would make faces like you. And I'm like, I know he's, and so, yeah, I had him still, but he was sort of like, okay, the pressure's off of you. I've got these 2 that I'm not going to fuck up. So yeah, he was too young to ride, and he was leased out and other people were riding him. And so he was like my main focus point for a while, where I was like taking him to lessons. I was taking him to go work cows. I was going to show him all of this stuff. And you know what was interesting? Oh, this interesting experience that I had with him was, we were on track. He's very talented. He's put together really nice and he loves it. And when I was pushing so hard, and I think it was because I had this belief that and I'd had it forever, like my whole career, because I did the John Lyons thing and it felt I'm getting all these general horses, problem horses, or I'm starting horses. I'm like, but to be a real trainer, you have to go show. And so I need to get to a horse that I can show. I need to, that was like such a big thing for me. And so I finally get this horse that I can do all the things. And it was definitely for the wrong reasons. And I get to the point where I can go start showing him, and all of a sudden he goes dead lame. And I'm like, the fuck, like what is happening? And so, and it was right before we were supposed to haul up to Truckee to do this big trail ride with, my friend and client has a huge property out there. And, it was just going to be really nice out on BL. It was just 3 days of just riding and super chill. And 2 or 3 days leading up to it, he just went dead lame. And I was like, I'm like, okay, I haven't even been riding my mare. She's not fit. Like, that's not fair to take her. Like, what am I going to do? And so the vet comes out and he takes x-rays and like, well, this, and this. And, we're going to have to inject him finally. Like, we haven't done anything really with him except for osphos. And I was like, okay, fine. But, I can't do that right now, and so he's like, just give him a bunch of bute. You're not going to make it worse. Like, he'll feel fine. You guys will be good. And I was like, okay. He's like, just, it's just a couple days, bute him, ride him. You guys will have fun, come back, we'll deal with this. And so I was like, okay. So he was eating the bute here for probably that day before, and he was looking good. So I was like, okay, he's going to be comfortable. Like, this couple days, we'll just do this. And we're driving up there, and my friend was like, did you ever think about maybe it had to do with the correlation between showing and how it's not his thing? And I was at this point not listening to him. And I was like, no, that can't be it. That can't be it. That's ridiculous. What are you talking about? We get all the way up there. It's a 4-hour drive, and it's not an easy drive. We get there, we unload the horses. This beautiful pastures they get to hang out in. And I'm out there with him, and I'm like, okay, we're going to feed him. So I give him his stuff, give him his bute. And he's like, I'm not eating that shit. And I was like, he won't eat the fucking bute. I don't have paste bute. I don't even have something I can make into paste bute. And we are so far away from everything. I was like, oh fuck, like he's going to be dead lame tomorrow. And now we're here. And so it was just funny because he was eating it the day before just fine. So hard no on the bute. And I was like, oh man, I made a mistake. I should have never brought you. And I'm like going through this whole thing, and I'm sitting on this pasture, and he's grazing and he lays down. And so I'm sitting out there with him, and he's just like munching on the grass and like laying there. And
that's cute.
And I look at him, and I'm like, and he was like, I'm not showing. And I was like, this is one of my Dr. Dolittle moments. And I was like, I'm talking to myself. This is before I was okay with talking to myself. And I was like, shit. And then I was like, so I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, I promise I won't show you no matter what, no matter how sound you get, no matter what happens, like, I won't show you unless you tell me it's okay, but I won't. It's not going to be in the plans. And it was like this big like sigh. And then I was like, okay, whatever, still eating the fucking bute. So I go back in the house the next morning, everyone's like saddling up, and I'm like, oh, let me just look at him. I won't go. I'm probably just going to stay here and whatever, I'll hang out. Let me just like, throw him on a lunge line and just see how he is. Fucking completely sound, like completely 100% sound. And he was dead lame when we pulled him out. And I was like, and they were all laughing like, he's fine. And I was like, no, surely it's going to come up and we're going to be halfway on the trail and he's going to be lame. Sent him the other way. He's totally sound the entire weekend. Sound when we got home. Never had to have him injected, and and it's still sound. And that was like a couple years ago. And so it was just this really powerful, like, he was like, I'm like, I don't know if you're faking it. I don't know what the hell that was, but he was like, hard no. And now we're here. And now what are you going to do? Are you going to listen to me yet? And I was like, oh shit. It was immediate. And like, I couldn't even say, oh, we hate the butte. It was like, I'm not eating the butte because you're about to learn this right now. I'm like, okay, I got it. So I take him to work cows here and there just for fun, and he really enjoys it. You know, we get our fix and he stays sound. And but yeah, so but that was like one thing that I got like smacked in the face around, and it was immediate and it was obvious. And I was like, okay, I hear you. Okay.
That is awesome. I love that. It's like hard to hear at the time too, because you're like, fuck, like this was the whole reason why I got you. And that's kind of what happened with Kip too, because I got him because I wanted to do eventing with him. And he was kind of like, no, this is not what's going to happen. Like, we're going to go through this whole other journey. But yeah, I was talking with Felicity about something like that because I got like cellulitis in my foot and I didn't realize it was cellulitis. Like my foot was puffy for like a week. It didn't hurt. It was like cold. It was a weirdest shit. And Biggie got cellulitis in his left hind and I had been treating it and I'm like, oh, he's so prone to cellulitis and like, I don't know what's going on. And as soon as I like acknowledged what it was, like I went to the doctor, got the diagnosis, never took the meds. The next day, my foot was completely fine, and Biggie's leg was like cold and tight and fine. And like he hasn't gotten cellulitis since. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, why? How did that happen? How did that like correlate? And why? I still haven't figured out why though. Like, I'm like, why would he? Like, is that an energetic block? Some stuff still blows my mind. Like, this happened to me the other day, and I talked to a lady who was like, can we talk about my horse's saddle? And I was like, okay. She was like, it's got an adjustable gullet. I think he likes it. I don't know. So we start talking about the saddle. And then he's like showing me the color purple. And I'm like, oh, it has the purple gullet in it. And she was like, well, I've never seen the gullet. I don't know what it looks like. And he's certainly never seen it. We just got the saddle. And I was like, interesting, because that's like what's correlating. And she was like, well, I'm gonna take a screwdriver to the barn because I want to know like what it is. And she texted me later, I'll send you the text. She was like, oh my God, it's the purple gullet. Like it's in there. And that's when like the energy, that's where sometimes I will say, okay, people will say, do you think that it's just a gift that you have? And I do believe everyone can access it. But you know how like some people just have a knack for training. Some people have a feel for riding. It just comes so easily. And like, I don't think I ever get like psychic stuff, but it's almost like I do have access to like the higher, I don't know if it's a higher power. I don't know if it's like the highest part of the horse or what, but like, I don't think that that came from the horse. That had to have come from some sort of intuition that I have, because how would the horse know? And the same with their diet. Like a lot of times I can be like, you've had him on a paste that you're mixing into his food. It's been in there for 7 days or whatever. And I think it's benefiting this. And the person will be like, yeah, how do they know that? And I'm like, oh, they're so smart. I don't know. But really, I think it's got to be like some sort of like intuition type of thing, because I can pinpoint like minerals. I feel like the stuff with their body definitely comes from them. The emotion stuff comes from them. But then there's just like certain things where I'm like, how did I know that? I don't know, like how I know. But like I'll be like, oh, he's showing me a scoot boot, and that like you've been thinking about it, and the person will be like, oh, I have it saved on my phone, or they're in my car, but he hasn't seen them yet. And I used to think that I was connecting with the person on accident, and like I do feel like the animal connects to their people and pulls out certain information for sure. But then there's this whole other aspect of like the readings that are just like gnarly, like that gullet. It's like, where did that even come from?
Yeah, that's definitely your own guidance that's coming through, you know, for the horse and the human. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of cool, huh? Mm-hmm. Kind of weird. Cool.
Weird.
Cool.
That's so good. Well, that was so fun.
That was fun. Thanks for talking with me. I don't know why I was nervous. I always get nervous in the beginning, and then Celeste was like, she's so easy to talk to. It's going to be so fun.
Yeah, I try to chat for a bit. beforehand. And then it's like, it's always so like the dog is running out barking and I'm like muting it. And like, I like people that watch the pod, they just are like, oh, look at human beings are talking. And my whole intention is always like, I just want to have the conversations that I get to have with other people, but like to share them, you know, with other people on the outside of that, because I think that's where all the good stuff comes from, is just like sharing stories and like, you know, what do you think about this? And then I really like to be able to promote people's like stuff, you know, even if they're like, I don't want any more business. I'm like, well, just in case people are like dire straits and they're like, who can I call? And I'm like, Shayleigh. So
Yeah, that's
that part. Yeah. So think about the what I'm gonna do is I'll get the actual dates and stuff and details, and then I'll send it to you, and then you can kind of see how you feel about it. And your part in it can be whatever it wants to be. Like, it's very, the last couple events that I did where I sort of co-created with other people. I did a Susan Faye, and Sandy Vreeberg is a Masterson person, and the three of us did something last year, and we were sort of like, we don't know what this is going to look like, but if you would like to join us, and it worked out, it was amazing. And so it kind of feels like the same energy, but with more specific, you know, paired up with the person and the horse, and then being able to have the conversations with the other trainers because they've seen what you're doing. Like, what do you think about this? What else could I do? You know, and have people to be able to witness, instead of it being this weird competition thing where trainers are like, this is my way and it's the only way, where it's like, no, you get to like constantly expand what you know just by being around other people that are doing it just a little bit different. You know what I mean? And then having you in the mix would be really fun. So yeah,
that
so
would be super fun. That's what I love about like you and Celeste. Like, Celeste has been nothing but positive for me. Like, I met her kind of just going into it thinking I was going to like do her clinic and like teach her a little bit, because like we traded. I like taught her like a little animal communication course, and then she helped me with my horse, and she has like done nothing but uplift me since I've met her. And like, there's something about like being able to collaborate with other people. I keep telling my husband, I'm like, it's so crazy. There's like this major shift in energy because now I'm
where I'm what I'm good at, you know what I mean? And then I'm always asking myself, like, is there a better way I can do this? So I'm not closed off to evolving, but like, I don't want to go out and do body work sessions. You know what I mean? Like, I want to know enough to be able to explain it to people why I'm doing the groundwork, because that's the piece I have now that I didn't have before I run into Celeste and Tammy. And even when I did my interview with Tammy, like, I didn't even have that's how short I've been diving into this stuff. Because I've been doing this stuff for a long time with their bodies and everything that kind of Celeste is doing. But I just didn't know why I was doing it. I just knew that it made the horses.
Yeah, I remember you saying that in your interview with her. And you were like, no.
I would tell people that. I would be like, so I do this thing. And intuitively my hands would go where they would go. And I would just, and sometimes they try to bite you for a few minutes. And then all of a sudden there's this huge, like, I'm like, I don't know what and now I know. But so, yeah, it was like partially remaining open and paying attention to what the horse is saying. But like, I'm a trainer. I don't want to be a body worker. I want you to understand why we're doing this and how it correlates with what's going on inside of them. And now when I work on them, I can look at the horse and I can see, like I see the muscles, I see where the nerves are. And I'm like, oh God, this is so much better than when I was like, I don't know. But yeah, to be able to go, Tammy, this horse is so fucked up still. Like, what do I do? Like, am I hurting it more? Is it in his head? Like, is this physical? And I don't feel like it is. And so she's coming in March. And so I don't know if this resonates with you, but with the ulcer thing, like, she was like, ulcers cause the thoracic sling to collapse. And I was like, okay. And she's like, think about it. Think about the way we keep them. There are not many horses that are kept in an ideal lifestyle. We can do as much as we can for them, but like, are they out grazing all day long, foraging around, like da da da? She's like, no, they're not. Most of them are kept in. How many horses do you know that don't have any stress? I'm like, none. Feeding time is super stressful for them. You know what I mean? Unless they have food all the time. And mine do. Mine have slow feed nets with like really low sugar kind of a gross hay that I'm like, they eat, I'm like, that's always there for them and they do snack on it. So I'm like, these horses aren't starved all night long, you know what I mean? But dinner or breakfast comes and they're like, let us out of the stall, you know,
I know, yeah. They wouldn't have to resource guard like that in the wild. And
right.
yeah, it is useful for them. I kind of agree with that because ulcers cause such a slew. I talked to a horse yesterday who had ulcers and it created an issue with the phrenic nerve and like the way that his heart was feeling. He was getting sciatic pain in the left hind. He was inconsistent in the bridle because he couldn't comfortably lower his head and lift his back. And it's kind of hard because it's like, what came first? Like, do the ulcers come first? Mm-hmm. Or does the pain come first that causes the ulcers? And then it kind of goes back and forth, you know? But if there's any sort of ulcer, I feel like it just, yeah, it destroys the body because they can't think about anything else. It literally, when a horse has ulcers and I connect to it, it's that feeling of, have you ever had heartburn?
Mm-hmm.
It's the feeling of heartburn plus if you swallow something that's way too hot, like if you take a sip of coffee and it's so hot it burns the back of your throat, it's that feeling that sits right at the base of your diaphragm and then it radiates up and like it's almost, they can't think about anything else. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah. And that was her thing, was like, so think about like what happens to your body when, you know, your stomach hurts. You know, she's like, you do this. And she's like, they don't have clavicles. So what happens? And I'm like, oh my God, you know, and then it pinches off the brachial plexus and then, you know, then the pH gets messed up and it's like this fucking circle. I'm like, like, I can't do this. She's like, why do you think I don't have a horse anymore? I'm like, this is too hard. So
I know. And think about it from like, okay, so you're training them, you see them in person, you have the ability to impact them. Now think about it from my perspective where I'm talking to them on the phone and there's only so much I can say to help them. And then it's like every horse that I talk to now, like I'm realizing has some sort of thoracic sling failure or a nerve impingement or whatever. And then there's only so much I can say. I mean, what's great is like I can refer them to people like you guys, but then that only goes so far too, because, you know, not everyone's super open-minded about it. And that has been, it's so hard because like once you know more, that's why I'm diving into the bodywork side of things, because after I did that clinic with Celeste, I was like, holy shit, I'm not helping them enough because I might be able to bring awareness to it. But then I'm like, bye, hope you can find a professional that can help you. And I'm left sitting there feeling like, damn, I am not doing enough for them.
Yeah. I talk to people who are, you know, all over. And like, well, who can I work with in person? Because there is only so much you can do, like over a Zoom call. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know who you can talk to. I don't know. So that was sort of me dumping my last Instagram page. I had like almost 8,000 followers, but it felt old. And I was like, this feels different. This is like a bigger thing that's happening. And I got that guidance, like, you need to delete it. And I'm like, well, okay. This happened before with another thing. And I was like, okay, I need to pull some of the really good stuff off so I can have it, and like, no, delete it now. And I was like, and so every time that happens to me, I'm like, if I don't listen, then something's going to happen and I was like, okay, fine. So I deleted it. So I have this Instagram, it's like 110 followers or something. I'm like, why the fuck did I do that? But my thing was,
I know we were at first.
Everybody's like, what happened to you? And I was, but it was that, how can I create from this place where I want to attract trainers that are at least in the same realm, right? And creating these bigger events where you then start to know who is where, and, you know, body workers, and that you can say, oh, there's this person here, you know what I mean? And sharing people's work and like having it be more of that. And the name that had come to me, I fell asleep and I just kept I would set the intention before I fell asleep. I was like, what am I supposed to be doing? Like, what is this? So I woke up and the word alchemy was just like over and over and over. And I was like, okay. And so when I was thinking about what are trainers, what are body workers, what is it, what that you do? And I was like, oh, it's art. You know what I mean? It's like, there is no like rigid, like direction on how to do these things. And we are taking these things that are not so great and, you know, holding space for people to shift that, whether it's their actual bodies or, you know, how they think about it or whatever. I'm like, it is alchemy. And so then I was like, oh, the art of, and there was, the website was open, the domain name was open, everything was, and I was like, okay, I guess that's what it is. And so it was for the intention of, I want to create this bigger thing that happens where it is more than the flip side of the crazy shit in the horse groups, that they're still so barbaric and people are like, oh, just do this. And I'm like, what, who's doing that anymore? Like what, who's doing that still? Like, that's crazy. So that was sort of the intention behind these shifts, and then the creation of this thing that I do feel like is going to be bigger, but starting with these little tiny like collaborations with other trainers and body workers, and like at the same time, and having open conversations with each other in front of people, you know, so that they get to, and plant those seeds, and then that gets shared, you know, instead of it just being one trainer saying one thing. It's like people can hear it differently from different people, and you know, and so that was really my whole thing about it was, okay, this is what this is going to be. So
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
and I like the story behind the name too. You need to write a little post about that, because that's actually like a really cool way of like coming up with your name, and that's cool. I feel like people would really resonate with a lot of what you just said. I think you should make a little post.
Yeah, well, I was gonna do a quickie video or something, or you know, something to like explain, because you only have so much in your, you know, biography.
I know.
So I was
it's
like,
so crazy what people are still doing. I was getting on to YouTube something, because sometimes what I will do is I'll be like, your horse is really like fucked up and you need to do something, and I'll try to explain a stretch and people won't understand what it is, because the horse can usually guide me. Like there's almost no horses that like their legs stretch directly out in front of them. But they will give like they'll be, you know, anyway. So I was getting on YouTube to try to find something similar to what I was saying, because if you're not a visual person listening to my words, sometimes it's hard for people to be like, they're like, I have no idea what you're saying. But so I started typing it in, and there's all these videos out there from these trainers where it's like, how to deal with an aggressive horse. There's nothing safe about this video. How to get respect from your horse. And it's crazy that like a lot of those mindsets are like alive and well and like circulating everywhere.
Yeah. The other night I sort of stumbled into one of those groups, and I never do that, and I never even try to say anything in them because I know it's whatever. And it was something really small. It was like someone was asking about building stocks for their draft horses to get their feet done. And while I understand, yes, it must to have this giant 2,000, you know, pound horse holding its feet up for that. Like, yeah, of course, like there could be something. But I also know that people don't use those things and prepare horses in any way for something like that. They're going to shove a hard, difficult horse into those stocks and strap its fucking leg to the post. And so I was like reading it, and I didn't say anything until this woman posts this video, and everyone laughed at it, where it was this horse's whole hind end had slipped and its leg was still fucking strapped to this post. And I was like, this is the most traumatic thing I've seen in a real, and it ended up standing up. But I was like, what is happening? Like, that's the shit that I'm talking about. Like, fine, use the equipment you're going to use, but put safety measures in place. Like, the shit should break loose, or your horse should be, I was just like, and everyone, I ended up saying, and I didn't even say it in like a judgmental way. I just had kind of said, like, I would worry that people would use something like this. Well, you must not know what it is to hold up a blah, blah, blah. And it was like a whole thing. And then it got deleted because the admin was like, too much. But I was like, no one's judging, but you feel shitty because that's what you fucking did. You put that horse in there because it was hard to shoe, not because you needed support for its foot. You put it in there because you couldn't get it done any other way. Like, I know what happened. Don't try to lie to me. I know what I know what happens. So, yeah.
And then the responsibility gets put on the farrier for people's like lack of training too, which is also annoying. Like, it's like, they're a prey animal. Standing on 3 legs is hard mentally for them, emotionally for them, let alone whatever physical stuff they have going on. So like, freaking prepare them. Like, it's crazy how the stuff that people expect their horses to do, and like I've never had a horse that's comfortable in a double bridle in sessions. They almost always complain about something with a double bridle, yet they go around and perform and like suck it up. And it's just so gnarly. Like, what the horses will do for people. It's crazy.
Yeah, they're very
And he probably got back in there after that.
Yeah, probably. I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do this. It's hopeless. This doesn't matter. None of this matters. And I'm like, well, I'm already here, so I might as well do what I was supposed to be doing. It'll be fine.
Yep.
Oh shit. Okay. Yeah, so I'll edit this in the next day or so, and then I'll put it up, and then I'll share it with you, and then you can have
awesome.
it. Yay. All right. It was good talking to you. I'll get you dates when things get solidified, and then you can decide.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, cool.
Talk to you soon.
All right, bye.